a scheme called deferred shading, which is quite different from the more traditional rendering methods that most games use. There are a few other games that use deferred shading also, like Killzone on consoles, for example, and a few that use a little bit of hybrid schemes, but most games still use forward rendering, and that's what we've been using before with Frostbite and our previous games as well. But the difference with deferred shading is that instead of rendering all the objects just directly and then have the final picture directly that you then just do some post-processing on, instead with deferred shading, what you do is that we render all the objects, but we render not with the final lighting, we render them to what's called a gbuffer, which I'll show just in a second here. And then we take that buffer and light it. So you really separate the object rendering from the lighting, which is a major benefit in our case as we want a lot of different types of lighting environments. So it enables us to have hundreds of really large dynamic light sources in our levels. And we can also have destructible light sources and animating light sources. And the cost of the lighting in the scene is more dependent on the number of pixels the light source covers instead of the number of objects it covers. So we can have a highly flexible lighting scheme here. The drawback though is that it requires a lot of memory, a lot of GPU memory and a lot of memory power. So running 1080p with 4x MSA can take up to 160 megs of, this single buffer can be 160 megs of memory, which is kind of prohibitive, especially the memory RAM of trying to render at 60 FPS can be quite heavy. But we'll talk a little bit more about performance later. So here's how that gbuffer looks like when we're using deferred shading. So when we're rendering all our objects, this is really what we're rendering out. We're not rendering out the final picture. We're rendering out a bunch of multiple type of textures that contain different components. Contain the diffuse color of the surface, which is like the standard color. Contains a specular scaling factor for that, as well as a smoothness value, which is sort of how strong the specularity is on the surface. And we also render out normals that we use for the lighting later on. And this is really quite a different scheme to render. I don't know that many PC games that do it as fully as we do, but we found it to be a really interesting method and that helps us quite tremendously to achieve very different type of lighting environments. And going to even more lower detail tech on how we use this, when just doing some experimentations with the deferred shading, we found that with the Nvidia 11 GPUs, we found pretty early that we could use compute shaders there. Which is a way of not using the graphics rendering pipeline on GPU, but just using it as a general super parallel processor pretty much. We found a method that we developed that we call using cloud-based lighting, where we can use a compute shader, which is pretty much just a program you run that runs on the GPU and goes through every pixel, and it can do a lot of better light coloring to remove how many light sources affect each pixel, and as such more efficiently light that. We save a lot of memory bandwidth there, because that was one of the things I mentioned was a bit of a problem with deferred shading, is that you have this pretty fast gbuffer with 160 megs with full quality, and you have to read in that and process that on every single pixel when you light stuff otherwise. But with this compute shader-based approach, we improve performance quite significantly, especially when using MSA when you have these really large buffers. So this is something that's only available in Frostbite 2 when using the X11. So it's a pretty cool benefit that we're working on. If you use the X10, it still runs. If you're using more traditional methods, it's just a bit slower, especially when using MSA. But it still runs and looks the same. So here's a screenshot from Operation Metro that I think a lot of you guys have played in the beta. This is an indoor environment, of course, in sort of the cave subway section here. And this is the final picture I looked at. I just wanted to show the importance of lighting in this picture. So this is the final picture that you see on screen. And this is how the lighting work looks in this scene. So it's really most of the detail that you're getting are actually coming from the lighting, which is really quite remarkable of how efficient it is here. So it's the lighting combined with the normal maps on the surface. The normal maps that are rendered into the gbuffer that sort of contribute tremendously to this picture. Another example, also from Operation Metro, is further out on the actual subway here. Here we have the pure diffuse lighting that we're rendering out. We have a whole bunch of different types of light sources. We have up on the roof here, we have line lights, which are sort of these long cylindrical light sources that are lighting up the environment. We have a lot of flexibility in what type of light sources we can use. You also see that there's almost like there's light everywhere a little bit in the scene, and that's our radiosity solution that's been calculated to bounce around this light in the environment here to light up everything, so it sort of fits together, which looks really quite nice. So this is the diffuse lighting. We also have a specular lighting pass that's done at the same time of calculating the more direct reflection of lights, which is used by a couple of multiple methods here. Some light sources affect the specular, some don't, and we have environmentals and multiple methods. So the diffuse and the specular are really rendered at the same time and then combined to a single final picture where you both have the diffuse lighting, you have the specular lighting, and you have the colors and everything from the gbuffer as well to get this final picture, which looks really quite interesting.